I never believed the phrase, "some places remember." I always thought memories belonged to people, not buildings. That belief ended 3 years ago. This story isn't something I enjoy telling, and honestly, I've avoided writing it down for a long time. But after what happened, and after realizing I wasn't the only one who experienced it, I feel like it needs to exist somewhere, if only as a warning. This happened when I was 26. At the time, I was broke, exhausted, and desperate for work. I just moved back to my hometown after a failed attempt at starting over in another city. My savings were gone, my pride was gone, and my options were limited. That's when I found the listing. Night security guard, temporary assignment. Location, Hawthorne Elementary closed campus. Hours, 10 p.m., 6 a.m. The pay was unusually high for such an easy-sounding job. All I had to do was patrol the building, check doors, and sit in the security office. No kids, no staff, no visitors. The school had been shut down the year before due to structural issues. At least that's what the ad said. When I called the number, the man on the other end didn't sound surprised, almost like he'd been expecting my call. He asked only 2 questions. Have you worked night security before? Can you stay awake? That should have been my first warning. The first night, Hawthorne Elementary sat at the edge of town, surrounded by overgrown grass and a rusted chain-link fence. The playground equipment was still there, swings hanging crooked, a slide covered in graffiti, and a sandbox filled with weeds. At night it looked abandoned in the most uncomfortable way. Not destroyed, just left behind. The front doors were unlocked for me. Inside, the air smelled like dust and old paper. My footsteps echoed too loudly in the empty hallway, and every sound seemed to travel farther than it should have. The security office was near the main entrance. A small room with a desk, a chair, a security monitor, and a binder labeled Night Procedures. The binder instructions were simple. Patrol every 2 hours. Check all exterior doors. Report vandalism or trespassing. Do not enter the basement. That last line was bolded. I remember laughing quietly to myself. Every creepy place has a basement rule, right? It felt cliché. I settled into the chair, turned on the monitor, and waited. The cameras showed empty hallways, empty classrooms, and the gymnasium filled with stacked chairs. Everything was still. At exactly 11:47 p.m., I heard the first sound. It came from down the hallway to my right. A single sharp noise, like a locker slamming shut. Patrol 1. I told myself it was temperature change. Buildings make noises at night. That's normal. Still, I grabbed my flashlight and started my first patrol. The hallway lights were on, but dim, half the bulbs flickering like they were tired of working. Lockers lined the walls, painted a dull blue, some dented, some hanging open. As I walked, I noticed something strange. The walls were covered with children's artwork. Crayon drawings, construction paper cutouts, faded posters. Most schools clear that stuff out when they shut down. This one hadn't. Some of the drawings were normal stick figures, houses, suns with faces. Others weren't. Dark scribbles, shapes with too many eyes, figures standing over smaller ones, red crayon smeared so hard it tore the paper. I told myself kids draw weird things. Then I reached classroom 104. The door was open. I was certain it had been closed on the camera. Inside, the desks were arranged in perfect rows, chairs pushed in neatly. On the chalkboard, written in uneven handwriting, were the words, "We're still here." I stared at it longer than I should have. Someone must have broken in, I thought. Teenagers, a prank. I radioed it in but got no response. No static, nothing. I wrote it in the incident log and continued. The cameras. Back in the security office, I rewound the footage. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. At 11:46 p.m., 1 minute before the sound, the camera outside classroom 104 showed the door already open. It had been open all night. I convinced myself I was just tired. That was my second warning. Night 3. The first 2 nights passed with small things. Footsteps when I wasn't moving. Whispering that stopped when I listened. Doors unlocked that I knew I'd checked. On the third night, I arrived to find something new. A child's backpack sat in the middle of the main hallway. Pink, dirty, old. I checked the cameras. The bag wasn't there on the footage. It had just appeared. Inside were school supplies covered in dried mud. At the bottom was a notebook. I shouldn't have opened it. Every page had the same sentence written over and over in shaky handwriting. Don't let him take us. That night I heard running. Not footsteps. Running. Small feet slapping against tile. The sound circled the hallway, faster and faster, until it stopped right outside the security office door. I sat frozen, staring at the handle. Someone or something knocked. 3 slow taps. I didn't answer. The basement. By the end of the week, I was barely sleeping during the day. I looked sick, pale, hollow. I considered quitting. Then the manager called. He asked, "Have you heard them yet?" I didn't answer. He sighed and said, "Just stay out of the basement." That sealed it. On night 8, I broke the rule. The basement door was at the end of the west hallway. Heavy metal, no window, a keypad that didn't require a code. When I opened it, cold air rushed out. The stairs descended into darkness. My flashlight beam shook as I walked down. The walls were covered in scratches. Not random. Vertical. Like fingernails. At the bottom was a single room. Inside were dozens of old desks stacked against the walls, and in the center, a child-sized chair facing the wall. The wall was covered in writing. Names. Hundreds of names. Some scratched so deep they cut into the concrete. Behind me, I heard breathing. Low. Close. Not a child. I ran. The truth. I didn't come back the next night. Or the next. A month later, I looked it up. Hawthorne Elementary wasn't closed for structural issues. It was closed after a teacher was arrested. Over 20 missing children. The case was never fully solved. The bodies were never found. The basement was sealed. I still hear running sometimes, especially when I'm alone. And sometimes, late at night, I wake up with dirt under my fingernails and a name scratched into my wall. One I don't recognize. Yet,